Hello.
Okay, I guess we will go ahead and get started. I apologize for running a little bit behind here with some technical difficulties.
All right. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started so we're not wasting any more time. So my name is Yamira Raphael, and here I have Miss Virginia Pais Gilbert. We work here at La Casita Center. We're part of the mental health team. We do various of work, specifically my role and position. I'm the Latinx victims advocate, so I'm directly working with survivors of various crimes, in our community and Latinx community, to kind of support them and guide them through the whole like legal system, whether that involves going to court with them, or whether it involves making police reports or or talking to detectives about the case and how we can collaborate to support the team to help the survivor with this. Virginia, if you want to share what you do.
Absolutely. So I am the mental health team coordinator. Among other things, I receive referrals from other organizations of folks that are needing mental health support. And I also support Yamira in her role as a victims advocate and the counselors that we do have at La Casita.
And so this presentation is going to focus on human trafficking within our community, specifically in the Latinx immigrant population. It's a topic that kind of gets pushed to the side a little bit, and so we're wanting to create more awareness on the importance of being able to understand from a cultural perspective, on the barriers and the troubles and what's happening within our community regarding these types of crimes. And so to begin, we're going to be talking about the life of an immigrant before they end up migrating to the US. Before we begin, I do want to just quickly you know, uh, disclose that the information that we are providing can be a little bit sensitive, can be a little bit difficult to kind of hear and listen. We will be providing like real information that we've witnessed. None of this is based on journals or anything. This is what we've been witnessing within our community. I thought, just we thought being more transparent would be more useful. And so just to put that out there, if you guys need to step away, that's completely fine. And this also has no affiliation with anything political. We're just discussing what's being seen. And so to begin the life of somebody who migrates to the U.S. In a Latin American country, most of these countries are full of poverty, meaning that there is a lot of individuals, a lot of families who potentially could be homeless, potentially be suffering from lack of resources like food, clothing, electricity. A lot of these homes involve children having to contribute to their income. So, for example, in Peru, I've witnessed a lot of kids going on these super busy buses on busy intersections, and the stoplights there are like still brand new to them, and so a lot of these kids are running, jumping out of traffic and selling like piece of candy, for example, for the quarter here, just trying to support their families. Everything in these countries can be specifically agricultural based, so a lot of it comes with farming and what their land provides. That's how most of our communities are surviving in their countries. What they can grow is what they're going to be able to eat or use as resources. Um, a lot of the homes within the countries that we do support, or we are aware of, or lived in, um, we decided to put like low income housing, and kind of connect that with low quality materials. A lot of the homes that the individuals do end up living in are either made out of very cheap wood, cheap materials, cardboard, mud sometimes, or like a clay form of mud. And so when natural disaster happens, all of that can be completely ruined and gone, and then they end up homeless or having nothing to them, specifically in smaller communities where it's where the weather can be like really unknown or unaware, and so anything can really happen. And so what's causing families to migrate is all of these lack of resources within their country. And then Virginia's gonna touch on the journey, to kind of get a little bit more perspective on how it is when they migrate here.
Thank you, Yami. And if I can just add in one of the pictures, some of the one of the houses that Yamir is talking about on the left-hand side, you can see behind my great grandmother there that that's her house. It's built. It's a little hut, and it's built with trees, fallen limbs, and like she said, some sheet metal or some palms. So it's whatever resources that they have in small what they call aldeas, so small little counties or towns. So the journey here can be very difficult. Something that Yamida was touching on was pre-journey, which is poverty. There's also intimate partner violence. There's a high index of either gang violence or intimate, like I said, intimate partner violence. So a lot of those multiple layers of trauma, or it leads a person to want to leave or escape for a better life, which is the American dream. And I think a lot of us maybe have heard about the American dream. So during the journey to the United States, there can be additional trauma. The journey itself is very, very difficult. Something that I like to tell folks or families that when I meet them, not right off the bat, obviously, but is my journey. I came in a train similar to the one that you see in the picture on the right-hand side there. When I was explained as a child, my mother would tell me that we came on a train, and what I picture was, they're telling me that we got, pulled over. I was asked because I was 3 years old, who came with you, and I was naming off all the people that were with me. In my innocent child's mind, I thought we were in a train, not in first class, but definitely had our own seats, and people were pulling us over, and they kept stopping us because immigration, we had to, I'm from Guatemala, so we had to come through Guatemala and to Mexico, and then finally to the United States. But uh, I had the feeling or the thought that I was coming to the United States, with a ticket and that kind of thing. Definitely not the way I came. I came the way that you see there. And so all these people are exposed to the weather. Whether it's harsh sun, desert land, as you can see in that picture, rain, and then also they're vulnerable, right? Limited money, no food, limited water. And when they're coming here, or when we're coming here, we also experience uh, uh, a, um, the people, either it's immigration or whether it's the people from the town, take advantage of their situations because they have no family and no resources, and they're very reliant on neither themselves or the noble folks that they encounter. We have heard stories of young girls who have been kidnapped along the journey. They have been raped. And because they're so desensitized to these traumas that they experience in their home country, in their journey, they're not able to identify the fact that they're kidnapped and they're being asked for ransom, or that they have experienced additional traumas. And so when they arrive here, and along these journeys, some people use what they call coyotes, which is the person that is able to guide them along the way. And again, they're really reliant on these people to get them from point A to point B, and that's not always the case. Some of these coyotes can take advantage of these folks. And so when they arrive here, they face a different reality of what they are used to, or what they know, what their home country was. And so Yami's going to talk a little bit about the post-migration, but I want to show you, I talked a little bit about the way that I came on a train. I want to show you about how some folks, and it's a very quick 5-second video, very short video, of how people can also cross the Rio Grande. And it's also a very dangerous journey with some people. They're reliant on the waters, and some people have also been known to drown.
And so as you guys saw in that video, like there was babies being carried in like suitcases and stuff, and actually in that river, a lot of times people don't make it because of weather. And so sometimes a lot of people end up drowning, and that's one of the realities of migrating to the US. I had someone that I was working with who disclosed to me that she was in the jungle from Venezuela for days, no food, no water, with her 2-year-old daughter. And but luckily they were guided by somebody who was able to assist them and get them there to safety, as some people who do get those guides to kind of help them, and they pay all this money to get here to the US. Sometimes those guides, Virginia said, they end up just leaving them behind, and causing them even more trauma, and leaving them there for more vulnerabilities, for more access to be trafficked, or be a survivor of a sex crime or a physical crime. And so the realities here in the US, once they migrated, are unfortunately the same as when they left their country. A lot of the times they're fleeing their country due to, as Virginia mentioned, like violence of some sort or lack of resources. But then they come here to the U.S., and what we're witnessing is even more violence and more lack of resources, more lack of being able to access resources. And so, to begin, once they come to the U.S., they had to deal with border control. You know, I'm anti, LMPD, anti cops. You know, there's more training there, but I can't imagine how somebody who doesn't speak any English could be treated at a border when we know that the U.S. right now isn't so fond of immigrants coming in general, right? And so sometimes these officers, border control people, they end up taking also some advantage of our immigrant population, which makes them even which creates even more of a risk for them to become victims or survivors of sex crimes. And so with that comes that neglect. I know some of us during the pandemic saw the children being locked up in cages, lack of food, the burning of crosses and Bibles. You know, almost kind of like a Holocaust almost. So that's the reality of what was happening in the pandemic. Right now, we can say that it's probably still happening the same. It's just not being talked to as much. There are still people being neglected as they're crossing. There are still people being denied entry, even though there might be a cartel or somebody or a group of people wanting to harm them back in their country. So they're being told to either go back, or the ones that do are able to make it past, right now, they have to be indiscreet getting to a safe place or a safe city, from wherever they're crossing, to make sure that they're not going to continue to be neglected, and they're trying to survive now here in the US. So they made it past border control, they made it past immigration, and now they're here. And so now they're trying to survive, trying to find a job, which becomes very difficult if you don't speak English here in the US. Trying to find food banks, and healthcare. Right now, it's very impossible for some individuals to receive these benefits because they don't have a social security number. And so what do you do when somebody who doesn't have a social security number to be able to apply for these resources? What do we do? Where do we send them? Luckily, like Asita here, we're an organization that provides food. We have a resource Tuesday every single Tuesday of the month to support with that, but it's still not enough. And so this is where the brutality and potentially even death can step in. So those who are already came here due to trauma and who probably experience even more trauma here, or trying to escape whatever trauma that they have been endured with, they come here, and because they don't have any resources, they don't have any money, they don't have stable housing, stable income, food upon the table, we've been noticing a lot of individuals basically having to do what they need to do to make a living, whether that is human trafficking, whether that is, you know, just pulling the odd end of the stick, and doing whatever that entails. And so that creates even more trauma, more disparities within the community. Um, Not being able to speak English makes it even more difficult. Survivors that I've been working with have the fear of making police reports, have the fear of voicing anything because one, in their country, they were told it's normal. They were told that that this is supposed to happen. He's your husband. He pays for your rent. He does this. He does that. They're being told if you contact police, immigration's going to get involved, even if they're a survivor. And so a lot of what I do is I educate those individuals in our community to let them know that even if you are undocumented here in the US, you have the right, you have victims' rights as anybody else on US soil, and you have the right to contact the police. And a lot of our population does not know that. A lot of our population um, thinks that any form of legal involvement, even if it's a speeding ticket, even if it's like your child going missing, it is considered you know, don't do that because immigration could get involved. It's considered the biggest fear of them all, which is causing these crimes to happen in our community. But then there comes that part where we're not getting the support from community members, including police. And so this is where we've been chiming in a lot and trying to push the narrative that our community is facing human trafficking because they're now these individuals that we've been working with who are unfortunately children, they're being labeled as runaways. So how do we get the community to hear us if these children who were providing, liable evidence that they're being trafficked, but no one's listening? And so again, that's how even more of the crimes increase because police are just pushing it to the side, calling them runaways, and giving these children even more motive to keep running because they're not going to do anything. Um, and so again, the reality of coming to the U.S. as an immigrant is that it's all work. There's no American dream per se, unless you have the privilege of coming here with documents or with that an actual sponsor that does want to support you and house you. A lot of times, also many of our families come and because their families have helped them or guide them here, but then once they get here their family members are like, no, you have to go and get your own stuff. I got you here, the least you can do is get your own stuff. And so again, making them even more susceptible to being homeless and being more susceptible for human trafficking and other types of sex crimes as well. The video that I'm about to show is what I was mentioning earlier. This it's gonna say it here in the video. It is a TikTok video, but this really happened. This person was fleeing their country because they were in danger, and the person that was guiding them completely abandoned them. And so, Vicky, you want to press play, please?
Todo está bien. No, todo está bien. Quiero ir con mi mamita. ¿De dónde eres? Yo tengo acá en Puebla. ¿Oaxaca? Tengo acá en Puebla. Bueno, todo está bien. Gracias. ¿Tienes comida? ¿Quieres comer? Me agarré un poco de ahí porque dije que voy a seguir. Todo está bien. Voy a tomarle para la patrulla. Sí, por favor, yo me quiero ir a mi casa con mi mamá. Yo era un pastel, me dejaron en esos cerros, tuve que atravesar desde allá para acá a buscar en el rancho ayuda. El grupo se fueron. Se fueron, me abandonaron, ya no pude seguir caminando. Sí. No más, no hay nadie más. No. Todo está bien. Gracias, gracias. No, todo está bien. Muchas gracias.
And that right there is a reality of what someone does experience when they're migrating to the US. And sometimes when an individual gets hurt while migrating to the US and they're in deserts or jungle, they unfortunately also do get left behind with their injuries, and the group just continues. And sometimes they're left with no food or water. And so, again, like all of these traumas that they're carrying, then they're coming here to the US and they're left with even more of nothing and completely even more lost, more susceptible to being trafficked, um, because the need is so important here in the U.S. to have a job, to make income, to have a home, to have food, and that's majority while our community, especially our children, are being targeted at this moment. They're being promised fancy new iPhones. They're being promised fancy new cars, or getting to ride in Mustangs, getting to ride in Corvettes. and they think that coming here to the US and the only way to make a living is to live this crazy adventurous life, when reality it's like it's more of a systematical issue, of course. But this is what I guess society is implying for our community to do as a last resort, because there's no other options at this point. And so Vic, a little bit more vulnerabilities when it comes to this group.
Thank you, Yami. Yeah, so we going over some of the realities of when, people migrate to the United States, different things that they can encounter. And some of the additional vulnerabilities I think Yamita had touched on, which is age and gender. The youth are targeted, is what we're seeing a lot of our cases of right now. It's young girls, young women. But I wanted to add an additional layer that we are seeing are when unaccompanied minors are coming, and they're coming, let's say, to meet a family member, a parent that they've never grown up with because they grew up with their grandma, grandpa. And this happens quite a bit. There's already a distrust within the family dynamic. And so these girls are additionally vulnerable because they are easily lured away because they already don't have that connection with that parent. They're already feeling that resentment. And so there's a lot of emotions, and they're so easily targeted and exploited by these people that are looking out for easy targets, right? And that's what they are. They're easy targets because they have no documentation, and so they're luring these folks with an easy job, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking. They're luring people, men, women, but particularly girls right now. That what we're seeing in Louisville is young girls to be able to make easy money. And one of the things that Yamita touched on as well was luring them with like a phone or making easy money and getting a car, or also there's that understanding, right? When you don't have that love and protection that you don't feel from your parent. I'm sure they love their children, but there's already that resentment. They exploit that relationship. And the other thing that we're seeing among youth, particularly this one is particularly among boys, young men or youth, is substance abuse, but particularly alcohol abuse. And so there's a lot of DUIs, unfortunately, that we do see. We also have seen cases of young boys that are being exploited in similar situation as the girls. It's a little bit different, but they're being lured into violence and stealing weapons, and of course their immigration status, right? That's a giant vulnerability. Just like Yamita said, a lot of them don't qualify for services because they don't have that little number that can get you all of the services and can get you health care. But they don't, the fact that they can't get a job so easily, but they have a huge debt to pay to this person that brought them to this country is very an easy target for them. So like I said, unaccompanied minors or children that are migrating here alone, and they don't have the support system, or they don't feel like they have the support system that they should have, particularly from their parents if they're coming to meet a family member or a parent. One of the things that we saw in the video, and that Yemi also pointed out, was one of the babies that are coming. And like I said, I came here when I was 3 years old, and my mother was 21, and my aunt also came here, and she was 15. So young women coming here with children because they're fleeing violence. And so that's one of the things that we have noticed as well, is when women are coming here because they're fleeing, either gang violence, or they've been threatened, or they want a better life for their children. We're seeing that a lot here, and that there's this idea that when they come to the U.S., it's going to be so easy, and they're just going to come and find a job and money is just going to flow. But that is a misconception of what's happening and the word that they're getting and why they're coming to the United States. So the protections, as Yamita stated, are limited. However, there are survivor benefits. There has been, thankfully, some changes, at least here in Louisville, about victims' compensation when somebody is a survivor of a crime. And I'd like Yamita to talk a little bit more about that, and how that's changed a little bit. But she talked a lot about the fear, and she talked about language barriers, and lack of access to public resources. But Yamita works a lot closer with these survivors of crimes and how this has changed from being able to access resources and being able to be compensated for a medical exam or other things that has happened. And I like Yamida to be able to touch a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I really think so when I started working at La Casita and I became like an actual victims advocate back in 2021, I was trying to help people like apply for victims compensation, but I noticed that a lot of our individuals in our community did not qualify because they needed some form of ID number, either an NTI number for like paying taxes or social security number or any like even an ID number, just something to identify them. And so most of them that I was working with did not qualify, so they were left with like $32,000 bills because of a crime that happened to them that was not their fault. And so um something that we do like Casita is we do like constant reportings, and so I just kept bringing that to the attentions of victims compensation here in Kentucky that they like there's no way for us to offer these services to our community if no one qualifies. And so it wasn't until later in the year of 2022 that eligibility for exploitation completely changed, and it no longer requires that form of identification on those documents. So now anybody can apply for victims compensation, and that has helped tremendously a lot with our community. To the point where like they can now afford like their rent and they're not having to feel like they're going to be in debt for the rest of their life because something happened to them that was horrible and now they're paying for it. And it's just another step of them being able to heal and to process, which is why having access to those resources, whether it's public resources or private like LMPD or like court resources that's available for others, is so needed because it can impact someone's mental health a whole lot, whether a tiny bit or a little bit, or a lot. But like I've heard like having somebody who speaks Spanish and working with survivors who speak Spanish, like it has been a huge help for them. They felt completely accompanied throughout the whole process of their case, whereas somebody who potentially doesn't understand their culture or their background comes and helps and serves them, but they're not gaining that same relationship, or they're not getting all the information because somebody is having to talk through an interpreter because language barriers are a big issue. And sometimes the interpreter can even mistranslate things. I've witnessed during a sexual assault case on a child, the translator mentioned the wrong date and time. And you know, when it comes to sex crimes, it's so important to get the right dates and times when it comes to getting exams done. And so the community is so vulnerable to so many little things that we don't think that they're huge, but it's really a big thing. Just being able to go to a food bank and get food is very limited at this time too. And so we talked a little about vulnerabilities. I want to jump into talking about gender expectations within our culture, and this is where I guess you could say the self-esteem of the youth kind of starts to get created and starts building as they get older. It's something that continues to be a barrier for survivors, whether it's men or females who are seeking that support, or who are needing guidance, but they can't because they're either female or male. And so to begin, I just want to quickly point out that like there's so much diversity within Latinx culture. I growing up, I've heard the ignorance of many people saying, "Oh, are you from Mexico because you speak Mexican?" They don't even say Spanish; they say Mexican. And so that's something that a lot of us do grow up with. I'm Peruvian, Virginia's Guatemalan, and we both have way different backgrounds. We might have like similar words, but those words can mean completely different things between both of us. It could be insulting or it could be funny. Who knows? There's also the diversity of values and what one's culture does appreciate. So like some countries might value like their beans and corn a little bit more, or might value you know, that the woman has to have children in the relationship, or have like those weird traditions. And I'm saying traditions because we're trying to also break through that, because most of these traditions have become toxic to our community, and has created a lot of mental health disparities as well. And so just to touch base, every Latinx culture is completely different. And this is important also to mention when it comes to talking and asking for interpreters or translations, because the dialects are different. The the acronyms, the pronouns, everything is just different. And especially when it comes to like indigenous communities in Guatemala, they speak Spanish, but they also have indigenous groups that speak Quiche or Mum, and it's completely different from Spanish, even though it might sound similar. And so it's just important just to point that out. And so when it comes to the expectations and women and men in our culture, men are not supposed to cry. They can't show any emotions. They have to go work, come home, do the income, and then they can sit and relax because they're the man of the home. And that's what we call machismo. The men in our community are entitled to more power, to more control than the woman in the relationship, where the role of a woman is to be in the kitchen, take care of the kids, make sure the house is clean, dress beautiful, have your nails done, you know, have your hair so long, no piercings, no tattoos, no nothing. I broke all of those rules, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, it's so crucial to just understand, because when it comes to survivors, this is where them being able to speak about what happens doesn't ever happen. A lot of the men that I've been working with who are survivors of crime have a very sometimes difficult time explaining to me without feeling shameful or embarrassed because they're a man. I had an individual who was in a relationship and he was being abused, but he didn't want to tell me all the details until he saw me in person, because he just felt really shameful about what was happening here in his relationship and how he was being treated, because that's not normal in his country. And so his family didn't know. He couldn't talk to anybody outside of himself or me, because he didn't want that embarrassment or to seem weak to his family or his community. The role when it comes to like the perspective of how a woman should be in our culture, we're supposed to what's it called? We're supposed to deal with our husbands hitting us. We're supposed to deal with having to cook and serve and make sure that he's okay and the kids are okay, and you know, and all that stuff. And what we're doing here at Casita is we're educating both in all genders, not just not just men and women, but all genders that come through the door, to let them know that they have rights, that they can also be abused, and that it is okay if they experience something, and that there are things that they could potentially do. And educating them on what healthy relationships look like, whether it's with their family or whether it's with their partner. It's very important that they're being educated on this. And because the next bullet is about early implications, and all of this crazy mindset starts from a very young age. I remember being 6, and at the age of 6, we all play, we all go outside, we make friends, we're social, but the girls aren't supposed to play with the boys. If you're wearing a dress, you can't be playing in the park, going down the slide. I remember being told constantly to sit with your legs closed or crossed. But I like sitting but I like sitting down with crisscross applesauce, but that wasn't allowed, even though it was completely normal in schools and stuff, right? Because I wasn't being portrayed as a young lady, and I had to wear like all these earrings and it was just so much for a young child when they're just trying to be a child. And so a lot of the young boys are being told men should not cry, or boys don't cry, or stop crying. You know, go and do something, or go outside and go for or something like that. Or they're like, even if a child was to go up to their parent and be like, I'm not feeling too well, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm just having a lot of anxiety. A lot of times the parents would say, you're not lazy, you're not depressed, you're not anxious, you're just lazy. Go clean or go sweep or go do something proactive instead of just complaining. And so these are what youth are being told in our community, and we're slowly combating that. Um, and then this goes with cultural beliefs and values, right? Some cultures within the Latinx cultures, they have child brides, but it's really kidnapping. Um, there is that permission in some countries where the person who's seeking to date somebody who is potentially 14 years old or younger, sometimes even 9 years old, they'll come to the mom or to the dad and ask permission. Most of the time, I'm not sure how often, but most of the time the parents will say no. And when that happens, the person just ends up kidnapping them anyways. Or sometimes the parents do say yes, and the child is like, what the heck, right? And just, but sometimes also just finds it normal because, well, their parents said so and their parents gave them permission. So now you have a 9-year-old with 4 kids because their parents said yes. And that's what our culture comes here to the US also understanding. And this is also why there's been an increase of young women in our community being labeled as runaways, or really should be labeled as human trafficking, because they're within that age range of not giving consent, and who's targeting them are usually those who are 18 and over here. And so then these older men think that, unfortunately, they still in their country, they can target these young ladies, but that's what we've been also trying to assist with our community, is that that's not real. That's actually a huge crime here in the US. And so we're still collaborating with that. And then again, the children should be contributing to the income of the household. We go to the school, Newcomer Academy, which is specifically mainly immigrants, the school for immigrant children, and most of the kids there have jobs. And this is a middle school / high school, so the ages vary, but like some middle schoolers are working after school, whether it's documented or under the table cash, but there's still that need for the child to contribute even here in the US. And then genital mutilation. This is a very sensitive topic. We've actually had a case here in La Casita where we were able to assist somebody in getting gender remodification due to that form of mutilation, because they were a victim, a survivor of sex crime in their country. And so that also does happen a lot of the times when the abuser, the perpetrator, the person who's in charge, the pimp, whatever you want to call them, isn't getting their way. They find ways to harm the individual, or sometimes, as we heard in other cultures as well, it's a form to control the woman from having orgasms, from having pleasure. And so these things are still happening nowadays. These things are real, and it's not just women who are also being impacted, but also men as well. It's just very difficult still to this age to even talk to men about domestic violence, sexual assault, and even labor trafficking. They don't. A lot of our community members don't understand that you should be paid for extra hours you work. You should be paid for all the hours you work. You should have lunch breaks. You should make sure that you have at least a 24-hour break week within that of your 7-day hour or your 8-hour work days that you have to do. And a lot of the times they're being abused at their employment because they don't know the laws. And so that's also a form of trafficking as well. But the men don't see it as that. They see it as, I'm providing for my family. And so it's just barrier after barrier. We're slowly conquering them. But this is what's happening in the real world. And so Vicky's going to touch on how educating and how what we've been doing is, like, education is totally prevention. Like, I think we all that know by now.
Thank you, Yami. Yes, I know we went through just some really tough stuff right now. You want to take a deep breath or need to drink a little bit of water, please go ahead and do so. One of the things that Yamida did say, education is prevention, and it really is. So not only are we handling some of these cases at La Casita and accompanying these survivors of violence, but we're also educating the families on how to prevent, but we're also educating the community like you are here today, right? So some of the things that we're doing is we're providing culturally appropriate support groups. So what does that mean? We have one day dedicated a month where we're able to educate the community, our community, about their rights, about social emotional well-being, what they can do if they have been a survivor of the crime, if they have been victimized, or education on child abuse prevention, the laws of our country versus the laws of our new country, our adopted country, and how to avoid and see the signs in our children, right? And how to be able to educate them and how they can prevent them falling victims into either trafficking or sexual exploitation. So these support groups happen this one time a month, but we also have ongoing support groups currently. Recently, we had a support group for parents of teenage girls, mothers of teenage girls, and we were able to hear some of the things that they are struggling with the internet, you know, the age of the internet, what they're hearing from, you know, their other girls in the high schools, and how they're being lured on, not just online bullying and making easy money. And this is how we're able to bring you this type of information. And another one of the support groups that we have is for new arrivals to Kentucky. So people that have recently moved into Kentucky, however long that is, that have limited support. And there is a lot of trauma that we are seeing within some of these groups. This one in particular, we can see, you know, how the relationships are with their children, very different than the support group of the parent. They're at a different level, and maybe they have younger children, so the age of the children is also at play here. But we're also educating and supporting children at Newcomer Academy, as Yamida said. These are recently arrived children or youth that have substance use disorder themselves, or they have had a family member that has had that disorder and they need additional supports. So being able to talk to these kiddos about what they're going through. And we also have an LGBTQ plus support group in the Latinx community that's going on right now. With that being said, some of these groups have specific agendas of what we're talking about and targeted folks in our community. We have a youth group that doesn't necessarily have a particular agenda. It's just a support group amongst themselves, and it's a youth group. Also for middle school and high school students, we separate them by gender. And a lot of the things that we're hearing in the cases that you are hearing today has come from some of these participants. And so the things that we're bringing up are things that we have seen out in their community and in some of these support groups. So we educate them, we bring the support, and we bring them together so that they can support each other, but we can also educate them about their rights as a victim, as an immigrant, and just basic human rights, right? Because we are here and maybe we're undocumented doesn't necessarily mean that we can't live free of violence. And we don't have rights as a victim. So thankfully, things have changed, as Yamida explained earlier, of victims and how they can also receive some type of compensation if they need help with medical bills, particularly, I think, is one of the big ones that they needed support with. And so we are educating the community as you are here today, and we're also educating our peers. So we do we have a lot of conversations with other organizations, and we partner and collaborate with other organizations about how the Latinx community is a little bit different. As you've heard today, the Latinx community is very diverse. And so because of that, there can be miscommunications, things that can be maybe expected for somebody to know. Maybe I can expect Yamida to know something, but that could be, only something that happens in the Guatemalan community. And even so, in the Guatemalan community, there are about 24 to 26 languages that are indigenous languages that I know nothing about. So I just know two, but I don't know them. And so how diverse our community is. And more importantly is that we are able to provide services that are culturally appropriate. And I know it says therapeutic services here. These are some of the services that we're providing, but that we are approaching these folks and their experiences with cultural humility, right? We don't know what we don't know. And so it's best to be able to accompany these families, these people, and these youngsters because they know what they have experienced and they know what they're feeling. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about, actually, we're going to go through a question and answer. So if you have any questions, can you please scan this Menti? We'd like to know what you know. Let's see here. And what you have learned. Do we have any questions in the chat here? No, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat as well. So we can go ahead, if you can, we'll go ahead and get started. And you can go at your own pace, but I'll go ahead and go through the slides. Three folks from Louisville. Oh, wow, Lexington and Palestine, wonderful.
Hi, the chat is closed on my end. I don't know why, but I don't know.
Do you have a question? Go right ahead.
Yes, I do. You all are doing just amazing work, and La Casita Center is my heart, and Karina, and I just love. So I have it's in the Q&A section on Teams. What are some, and I did come late, so you tell me a thing. What are some quick takeaways about the connections between climate justice and human trafficking in the Latinx community? How does climate change impact human trafficking? How does human trafficking impact climate change? And what impactful leadership approaches do you see in the Latinx community that are fighting both climate change and human trafficking? So it's because the work is very hard and there's a lot of trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and how white supremacy and patriarchy shows up in our communities. And just also the beauty and the resistance work that's been going on for centuries in the Latinx community. So just the biggest question, like getting away from the academic part, is just like, and it's actually forward thinking because I don't hear it often in human trafficking work about the connection to the earth and how the earth makes folks vulnerable to human trafficking. So just really trying to pull that out from your work in this session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so I'm sure Karina would love to answer that question. She loves questions like that. But that's actually a really good question. I've never been asked that, but with seeing how the climate is now, for example, here in Kentucky, like I think there was hail in LaGrange the other day this week, and it was like 70 here in Louisville. And so if you can imagine if our countries are surviving off of agriculture, and if the climate's going the way it is here, I can't imagine how it could be in other countries. So because most of their resources come from the sun and from rain and from everything, if there's a drought that's being created in their country, it's just going to increase the need to find those resources, increase the need to migrate to the US for the American dream, which will, I feel, create that increase in human trafficking, whether it's labor, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, because there is a means to make some form of money income for your family to survive. In other countries, in Mexico, for example, I'm not sure because I'm not Mexican how easy it, or I've never been to it or never racist, but like I'm not sure how easy it is to get involved with the cartel, but if you maybe ask the wrong person for money, I feel like because you don't have the agriculture to sell, or you don't have the resources to sell to get and pay what you need to pay off, like your rent or your light or whatever it is, then these our individuals will be going to, unfortunately, these like weird, schemish organizations that could potentially be doing them more harm. Like here, we've noticed, like on Preston Highway, for example, some organizations, like, they're shady, but our community is trusting them because they speak Spanish. But at the end of the day, these are still shady organizations where sometimes their money is being taken and there's no services provided. And so bringing that back to climate change, I feel like that's how it connects, is like with climate change changing the accessibility to resources in one's country, that might cause them to basically look for the last resort to somehow make income. When they come here to the US, it's almost like, I don't want to say like slavery almost, but like a modern type of needing to do what you can, needing to listen to those who hold the power, so needing to listen to the laws, being scared of people who speak English, who might know cops, being scared of cops. All that stuff just creates even more of like realistic barriers for those to increase. Vicky, something you want to add to that?
And I'm sorry, I don't know if you can elaborate. Did you mean political climate change?
So, or yes, climate change, and then looking at which differs from climate justice, where we're looking holistically at different systems of power and how it impacts the earth and its people and the animals and plants. But just this question I'm finding in different human trafficking work and efforts is sometimes not connected to the earth. So I really appreciate your explanation. So definitely would like to hear more. How does climate justice connects with human trafficking in the Latinx community? And what are the amazing work that folks are doing, Indigenous, Latin Americans and Latinx, Hispanic folks are doing around the world? And that's a big question, but but your answers are really pushing us all forward in that work, in putting that in English words, what the thing is.
Yes, thank you so much for your question. Does anybody else have any question? I think Yami was able to. I don't have anything to add. I think Yami was able to.
Thank you.
I answered it. I just like, I'm also really, like, I feel really bad for Earth right now because like it should have not been this cold and it should not have been this hot so far. But I definitely do like the question you asked, and I'm gonna that made me want to do some more research and some more investigating. So maybe next time I'll have like a really more in-depth answer for you.
No, you pushed it, and just thank you all. I'm gonna mute myself, but I'm excited over here.
Do you have any more questions? Any comments or any concerns? This topic is difficult to talk about because it can seem that we're like kicking LMPD's butt because they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or we're kind of just being like really big political activists. But like, this is the reality of our community. Like, there's what we're doing, like Asita, is we're literally pushing for their voices to be heard. Like, people who are involved in human trafficking, whether it's labor, sex, or drug, should not be labeled as runaways. They should be taken seriously, even if it's like the most littlest like type of evidence that you have. Like, not, like, these things don't happen in one day. It is literally, it takes months for somebody to be human trafficked. It literally takes days for like things to go and for them to be taken. Like, they're not just gonna I mean, it's possible that they can just be kidnapped, just like that, but the reality is that these kids are being groomed. They're being told all these empty promises. We had cases where this girl was literally tired of being poor because her family just migrated, and somebody literally told her, I'm going to get you a job here, and I think it was like in California or something. And turns out she was in Louisville, hidden somewhere for a week or two until she was dropped back off home on the corner of a street, because she was promised a job and an iPhone in the car, and she was only 14 years old. And so these are the realities. This is what's really happening in our community. And so I hope the main takeaway that you can take away out of this is just like the continue to educate the community.
Thank you, Yami. And it looks like we have a couple of minutes. I went back to our slide just to be able to give you access to that QR code if you didn't catch that. But also it has our contact information if you have any questions, any additional things that you want to comment, something that you've seen and maybe need some guidance. Absolutely, we're here for that. We're here to accompany. And I know that we say we accompany Latinx community, but quite honestly, we've seen folks that are from Russia. We've also seen folks that are from Haiti. So we are welcoming of all. So just wanted to put that out there for you all. And last but not least, before I forget, of course, the wonderful team of U of L has asked us to be able to provide access to this evaluation. If you can please evaluate your presentation today, and if you can scan the conference information. And I'll leave that up for a minute. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to mute myself. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Thursday and a great weekend.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
Ooh, thank you. Great job.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Thank you.